In this video, we're going to continue to talk about lights in 3ds Max and Corona. So we're going to use Corona lights. We're going to experiment more with more light effects and more light parameters. In the previous video, we talked about the basics of lighting using a really important technique called the three-point lighting technique. So we placed three lights in specific positions and using different colors, different intensities to have this better three-dimensional look of our scene. And you can really do a lot of tests and experiment a lot with these combination of lights. You can get really a lot of different looks, a lot of different look and feel to your render. So in this video, we're gonna continue with this scene that we created in the previous video, which is kind of a photographic studio, and it's a playground for testing our lights. And also we introduce another really important tool, which is the interactive rendering. Now, interactive rendering, it's useful to test directly how the effects are gonna be in our scene rather than using just the preview in the viewport. So it's going to be a more accurate preview, a more accurate draft of our render. Now, the more you leave your interactive rendering work, the better your rendering will look in the frame buffer. So let's go back here into Google, and this is the three-point light technique here that we talked in the previous video. So I'm gonna duplicate here, and I'm gonna introduce a little bit of what we're gonna see in this other lesson here. So if I type noir movies lighting, just to show you what I intend by light effects and playing with lights and have fun with lights. So if you see noir movies, they really have this creative way to use lights and lighting in the scenes, because they didn't have colors, they didn't have materials, they couldn't show anything but this different way they use lights, so that they use lights in a really creative way. And I think this is a really good example of what you can achieve by managing lights. So you can see here these Venetian blinds effects and how they concentrated light in a particular part of the scene to draw the attention of the audience, to draw the attention of the viewer somewhere. So I think this is a really important lesson here that we can learn. And we're gonna see how we can generate some of these effects here in Corona for 3ds Max. And also we're going to talk about IES lighting or IES format, which is a particular format which can help us to create more realistic spotlights. And these type of spotlights are more like interior design spotlights or interior spotlights. And we're also going to play around with some parameters that are going to help us to create different types of studio lights, because we saw that we can create a photographic studio to do a render on a subject or a character or industrial design object, whatever. And we can use many different types of lights. You can see here an example. We have circular lights, we have rectangle lights, we have concentrated spotlights, we have more diffuse lights like umbrellas and panels that are pretty big. And all these will affect the lighting first and also the shadows. So the more diffuse is one light, the bigger it is, the more blurred will be the shadows and less details we will reveal of our character, of our subject. The more concentrated is a light, the more details we will reveal, we will enhance, and also the shadows are going to be really visible, going to be really sharpened. And so this is a choice you need to make. If you want everything diffuse and kind of, like for a magazine, you want to create something really clean, or you want something like more cinematographic, more specific for details on a particular face or body, you want to enhance those details, you can create more concentrated beam of light. So we're gonna use here different lights. We're gonna use different scenario. We're gonna use different settings, but we always gonna start with Corona light. Now in the previous video, we also saw the Corona sun, and we're gonna get to this later on, where we will talk about exterior rendering. We're gonna create some interior rendering, some exterior rendering, and we're gonna choose natural lights and also artificial lights. But in this video here, I'm gonna start again with the simple Corona light, and then we will move from here. So I'm gonna add this Corona light, and I can already see there a preview of what the light will be and the shadows also will be. But again, this is just a preview that we see in the perspective. Even though we are in high quality, this is just a preview. We cannot get the exact result staying there on a preview. We need to switch into the interactive render mode, or we need to render one way or the other. Now you can also see here, you have different other types of preview. Now if you work with the interactive rendering, you can also choose to have another type of preview there, perhaps a little bit lighter. And you can also run a interactive rendering directly into the 3ds Max viewport. So just click there and it's gonna run inside, but I'm gonna keep it in the frame buffer. We're gonna have more tools in the frame buffer to play with, and we can also record the history of our rendering, so we can do tests and then record everything. And I think this is way more important than the render itself. So another problem here is that when we move into other views using the interactive rendering, is going to change according to where we are in the view. But what happens if I want to change, for example, the light here, but I just want to change the light and not the view? I don't want to move into the front view, so I just want to move the light and stay in the perspective. Now to do that, we need to lock the view. We need to have that view locked in order to work with the other views and always get the same effect and the same view. So to do that, we need to lock the view. We need to go to rendering and go to render setup and go to the lock view right here. Make sure that that's on perspective. So right now we are in the quad 4, which is our type of layout, and we are using the perspective. So once it's locked, now I can work in all the other views, changing the light position, changing the character position, changing whatever I want, using front view, side view, top view, and I'm not going to change the interactive viewport that I'm using. So this is really helpful because it's gonna let me stay where I am studying my frame, my picture frame there. I don't want to move into top view, for example, here. So with this tool, I can easily place the lights around. And again, this could be a key light here. So I can move it around and see what's gonna happen. And you can see how the interactive rendering is a far more accurate preview than the high quality preview in 3ds Max. So when you use Corona render, this is the best option in my opinion. If you use Arnold render in 3ds Max, you can use the viewport there. Now, if you're interested in 3ds Max or Arnold or V-Ray for 3ds Max, which are other render engines, you can check the video courses in the channel. So you can also write comments, questions, ask for assistance, but you can also write suggestions if you want. Now I'm gonna make this light source smaller, and you can see already how it's gonna affect the shadows. So by changing the size of the source of lighting, we are gonna change also the effect on the shadows. Again, lights and shadows are connected. There is a relation between intensity, size, distance also,